Yo, listen, before the episode starts, I just want to say real quick that this the beginning portion and another portion later is audio only. So you're gonna see the SharePoint Help Desk logo, the SharePoint Help Desk podcast logo during the audio portions. But don't worry, if you want to see the actual video conversation between me and Constance, you'll see it. It's there. It's just that I'm lining this up with the audio portion, which has me talking over it. So enjoy. Yeah, if you are a regular listener of this show, then you know that I do a segment called LinkedIn Love. LinkedIn Love is where I shout somebody out from LinkedIn. A few weeks ago, I shouted out Constance Jackson, and I told y'all the reason I shouted her out. It was a number of reasons, but we met at proposal team training, and during that training, it was one of them sessions where she was kind of like a mentor, and she came back and she answered questions for the folks going through the class at the current time. And she just was, giving us all of this game, you know what I mean? Just because she was like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, she just gave us all of this free information, and I was just like, man, this is good stuff. So I got in contact with her outside of the class, and I kept following her on social media. Then we connected and talked some more, and I found out that not only is she that wealth of information, but she's like easy to talk to, you know what I'm saying? And I can ask more questions and find out more. So the reason why I have her on this show today is because I feel like I'm being greedy, you know what I'm saying? Like, knowing all of this information, asking all these questions, getting all this stuff, but I'm not sharing the information that I know with enough people. So I had Constance on the show so that I could talk to her about who she is and, the advice that she wants to give out. I really think that if you listen to this show and you are particularly in the government contracting space, or you just deal with contracts, period, this is someone that you need in your network. But on top of that, I'd like to get to know her a little bit and like to get you to know her a little bit. So we were chatting, and she mentioned she mentioned moving while in the military. I didn't know she was what the term is, military brat. You know what I'm saying? Where like you're a kid in a family who bounces around from place to place with your military family. I don't know if they still use that terminology. With things changing these days, maybe military brat is insensitive. But the terminology is that, you're the kid who lives in a family and like the family bounces around or whatever. So she said that. And when she did, I started to ask more questions. So here she is answering that question plus more.
And so, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and we grew up in a military family, so we moved.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, wait. I didn't know that. So you did you bounced around.
Yes.
So did that happen in high school? Did you do the same high school for all 4 years?
Yes.
All right. So
I started out in
high school.
Florida. Yeah, so I started out in Florida, and I was in Florida because my mother, a couple of different places my mother, we didn't move. But then I was in Florida, and we went to Washington State. So we went all the way across the country, complete culture shock. Cold. I had never seen snow before in my life. And it was just a completely different environment.
All right, now that is another big deal because I personally I'm way into the military community. I didn't join the military community until I was 18. But one thing that I've noticed about folks who grew up in military families and they bounce around, here's the difference. So there is value absolutely in being in the same high school, and knowing all the same friends, all that other stuff. But the thing that I have seen with kids who bounce around is that they're not like pigeonholed to that one neighborhood or that type of thinking. You know what I'm saying? So a piece of advice I always give, like my cousins or whatever, or even my kids, I'm always like, listen, there's going to come a point where you have to leave your neighborhood. You have to leave your environment so you can see what the rest of the world looks like. You know what I mean? You can't, it's very easy to think that your little neighborhood is how the whole entire world works. But if you're a military kid that bounces around, you get that education way earlier than everybody else. Usually you got to like hit 18 and then leave home. But before hitting 18, you get to bounce around and see how different cultures work, how different, people talk, how things work. You know what I mean? Now, do you think that informs a lot of how you operate with the world today?
100%. When I moved, In high school, this was my first time moving. I had been in Florida all of my life. I was devastated because I wanted to graduate from the high school that I started with. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to be a tiger, you know, like I wanted,
Okay.
like I saw it in my future. Like I'm graduating, I want to be a tiger. I go all the way across the country. Things are completely different, complete culture shock, but it is absolutely impacted who I am today. And it was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. And for the
Oh,
reasons that you mentioned, because they do things are a certain type of way where I grew up. And I go to Washington State, I learn about different cultures, different groups of people. I never heard of people from Guam before.
hmm,
So you know, it's just different people. I went to high school with kids that was from Samoa and that were Tongan. I never heard of that before in my life. So having
me
that
either.
exposure, yeah, having that exposure was key. Just they live life differently on the West Coast versus the South. You know what I mean? There were so many things that I got exposed to that were necessary in my growth. And anything that I would say to another parent, more than money, more than even two parents being in the household,
Hmm.
exposure. Your children having exposure is the most important thing in the world, in my eyes, as a parent.
Yeah, I feel you. Because then that gives you the ability to make better choices. You know what I'm saying? Like
Better
your
choices because
kids.
you're better informed and you understand that it's not one way to do something. You know what I mean? Like you just
Hmm.
learning another way, learning that other people, you know, operate differently. One of the things that happened when I went to Washington, in Washington, you don't go in anybody's house with your shoes on. And I'm sure that comes from like being so close to like Japan and China. Like I know that that's
Hmm.
something that, you know, they don't do. But you take your shoes off. I've never seen anybody do that before in my life. But now, like I that started when I was 15 years old. And now that's something that, you know, I've incorporated into my life, like because I'm
Yeah.
so used to taking my shoes off. And people who have not had that exposure or they're not familiar with it, sometimes they take offense to it. But it's a, you know, people whose house you go into and you have your shoes on, they're offended by that. You know what I mean? It's a cultural thing, but it's
Yeah,
something
that's a
that I
fact.
picked up. Yeah, everybody does it out there in Washington. Like you don't wear your shoes in people's house out there. It's just how
That's
they do.
crazy. Cause that's how it
Yeah.
is in my house. My family is from the Caribbean, and I grew up in a house where that's what we did. We took off our shoes in our own house when coming in, and if we went to
Yeah.
anybody else's house, by habit, we take off the kicks at the door and then we walk in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I didn't even know that about the West Coast.
Oh
so
yeah. Yeah.
so after high school, so now I want to like transition into like how things really started to come about for you. So after high school, you finished up in Washington. Where do you go after that?
So when I left Washington, I was actually pregnant with my daughter right after high
Oh,
school.
word?
Right after high school, I got pregnant, like months after high school. I was getting
Okay.
ready to go into the military. I had I had sworn in. All I had to do was leave. I was going into the army. I was going into intelligence. I had already sworn in. I had my date to leave, and so I did my physical, did everything. And so they wanted to because there was I did like the I think it's early entrance or whatever.
Okay.
So I did that with the army, and they do one more physical because there's a gap in between the time you did your first physical and it's
Oh,
time for
right.
you to leave. So they
Yeah.
do another physical, and at that physical, they were like, yeah, no, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere because you're pregnant." And I was like, "What?" So
Oh, so
yeah, so
that's the way you found out.
yeah, that I mean, it was kind of simultaneously. I did, you know, go to the doctor and get a test or whatever, but it was kind of simultaneously, like, and so they
Wow.
gave me like a honorable discharge before I even went into
Wow.
the military. Yeah, I was scheduled to go. Like I was going to be leaving in August, and I think at the beginning of August or the end of July, I found out.
Okay, so real quick, why did you decide to go to the army? Was it because of the life you lived?
That definitely influenced it, but in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna go into the army. I'm gonna go into intelligence. I'm gonna be an officer. So I was planning to go enlisted and then go to officer school while in the army
Hmm.
and become an officer. That was my intent. Yeah.
All right, now, so you find out you're pregnant, you get an
Yeah,
honorable discharge, which is crazy. What do
yeah.
you, what do you do then?
Oh, I come to my mom is from DC, and she's like, my grandfather wasn't doing well, so she was like, we're going back to DC. So I came back to DC with my family. And so that's how I got back to DC, and that was like 1988.
Okay, so you came back, you're pregnant, and then this is where you have your child and raise your child and all
Hmm.
that other stuff at home.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
So all right, so yeah, I guess that's the reason why y'all are so cool. You know what I'm saying? Because you and your daughter, I mean, because y'all are closer than most. You know what I'm saying in age, so you
Yep,
get to
yep.
see that. So okay, you have your daughter, you're raising her, you're doing your thing. When do you go back and try something else? Because you already tried to get in the military, didn't work
Hmm.
out. You have your kid, you're raising your kid. What do you do next?
So I am working little, menial jobs. My first job, I was at the bank, and it was a major bank. It was First American Bank back then, and I worked in a department called chargebacks. So chargebacks is where and I didn't do individual accounts. I did business accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So when people were writing checks and the checks bounced, like I processed all of that information, like charged the money back to
Oh,
the company's account, as well as
okay,
the fees that were associated with it.
gotcha. Okay.
So that was my first real job.
Okay,
It was a
okay.
good
Now,
job for somebody who was out of high school, you know what I mean? It was a good job. Like, I learned how the banking system works, and I was like, I will never bounce a check. When I saw the fees that were charged, I was like, I was 19 years old, and I was like, I will never bounce a check.
yeah, yeah.
And I learned about credit too, because you can't work at the bank like they run your credit report. Like any financial institution, a credit union, banks, and they do it on a regular basis. So if you work there, you cannot have financial issues.
Okay, all right, dope.
Yeah.
So that's your first real job.
Hmm.
Um, so then when do you go from that job to like entering the world that we're in now? You know what I mean? We both, are in the government contracting slash public sector arena. When did you go from working at the bank to this world?
So that was like a 9 year span. I was working at Sally Mae and I got laid off. I had another situation. Sally Mae was so good to their employees. I thought I would be at Sally Mae forever. I worked at Sally Mae, I think, for like 3 years. And I was like, I'm going to be here forever. But then they decided to move their operations from Virginia to, I think, Kansas and Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So we got laid off. So I was getting unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how you have to like show that you're looking for a job or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know how many people this happens to, but me, the unemployment office was like, we have an opportunity for you to go work. And it was working at child support enforcement. And I
Mm.
was like, what? So it was
They
like
hit they
temporary.
hit you and said, "We see a job. You should try this out."
Yes. So I
Interesting. All right, go
interviewed and
ahead.
I got it.
All right, so now you're working for child. What is it?
Child support enforcement for the state of
Child support
Virginia.
enforcement.
Uh-huh.
As
For the
in, okay, so as in a parent is not paying their share, and you have to hit them up and be like, "Yo, you need to pay your money."
Yes.
Yo,
Or
okay,
it could just be two people who want to establish an order. It's not always tumultuous and like bitter. You know what I mean? Like
okay,
sometimes
okay,
people just aren't together. Like we want to establish a child support order. So I mean, it's all
okay,
sorts of things. The majority of them are tumultuous and bitter, but not all of them.
okay, okay. All right, so that's a public sector job.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is your entry. Like this is where you start collecting checks from the. Well, I mean, he was getting child support, but I mean not child support, but unemployment. But unemployment comes from the company. So okay, you're earning your real first check from child support. What is it
From
again?
the
Why do
state
I
of
keep?
Virginia. Yeah, from the state of Virginia.
Okay, but it's what's the acronym? CSI. Child.
Child support. No, so it's like Department of Children's Support and Enforcement. I think it's like DCSC or something like that.
Okay, okay, okay. All
Yeah.
right. So now how are you enjoying that?
I loved it. I went in there like, I'm gonna get child support for everybody. I was like, I was like, I'm tearing this up. I'm doing this. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm a single parent. You know what I mean? So I was
Yeah.
like, I'm advocating for all the single parents, men and women. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting
Yeah,
child
yeah.
support for everybody. That was my attitude. And when I started working there, I saw people doing things like they at that time, you get busy signals from people's phones or whatever when you try to reach them. And like people would
Hmm.
have their phones off the hook. And I was like, I'm never gonna do that. I was like, these people need child support. I gotta help these people out.
Hmm.
Listen, it didn't take long. I had the phone off the hook because you can't work. You can be in the middle of something and somebody will call you. If your
Oh.
on the hook, they are gonna call you, call you, call you. You can't even get things done that you need to get done. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you had to do it. It wasn't that they didn't care. It just wasn't. I had like 3,000 cases. It's not set up for you to be successful. I don't know what's going on now, but in the
But
90s,
back then.
I had thousands of cases, and it just, there's just a lot going on, and it was a lot for one person to try to handle.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so all right. You work there, you actually are enjoying it.
Yes, I
Why
loved it.
okay, why do you end up leaving?
I left because that was a temporary job. And then I worked for a major credit union. I left and went to a permanent job. One of my friends was like, "We got an opportunity here. I can refer you." And so I go work for the credit union.
Yeah, you've had I'm always interested in people who have done different types of jobs because it's different from my situation. I have been in IT since I was 18. So whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm touching is always going to be some realm of IT. Even though the jobs have differed a little bit, it's always IT. But I've always thought about what if I did this? You know what I'm saying? Like what if I worked in a bank? What if I worked in, like your joints? If I worked at the child support spot, if I worked at a credit union, or all of these things, like where how would my life be different? You know what I'm saying? I consider that all the time because I had literally have no idea. I just been in IT and put the blinders on, and I've been doing IT since then. So, all right, bouncing around from job to job. It sounds like you're enjoying all of these jobs, but eventually something happens. When did you get the job or the work? Maybe it was a different type of job. When did you get to the point where you found something more long term or more permanent to what you're like doing now?
So when I was at the credit union, I was excited. My friend helped me out. She, referred me. Within 2 months, I was like, this is not it.
Oh, this is
I
the one
was
you
like,
don't
this is
like.
not
Okay,
it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I didn't like it. And so I tried to get other jobs within the credit union. They had
Okay.
like you had to be in a job for a year before you could transfer unless you wanted to get a waiver. Well, when I was trying to get a waiver, because I call myself doing the right thing, like I want to stay here, but I know that this isn't for me. I don't need to work here for a year. I already
Hmm.
had that mentality in my 20s. Like I don't need to be here for a year for me to understand. So then I hear that Lockheed Martin has won a contract to provide child support services, child support enforcement for the state of Virginia.
Really?
Yes. So that was
Lockheed Martin?
yes, because back then in the 90s, the defense budgets were shrinking. So they wanted to get in other lines of business. And so one of the lines of business was child support enforcement. The other one was like Social Security payments. So they would make payments to people who are getting Social Security. And then they had child support offices set up. And one, it was in Alexandria, Virginia, and one was in Arlington, Virginia. And I
Mm,
worked in Alexandria, Virginia. So
interesting.
that's how I really got into my first government contract.
Right,
I think it
right,
was a
right.
3-year contract.
And you worked the whole 3 years?
I did not work the whole 3 years. I didn't work the whole
Yeah.
3 years. So I loved working for child support enforcement, but it
Uh-huh.
also got a little dicey because I would see people out that I had in court, and they
Really?
would, yes, they would talk to me. When I was out with my family, they would like confront me about their child support case, and so it,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it got
yeah.
a little scary. It got a little scary at some points, and even when I was in court and I had people threatening me because they could just come to the office and talk to you. And I had people
Yeah.
threatening me because we could like suspend licenses, fishing licenses, put boots on people's cars, just just all of the like emotion that already is there because of people's relationships or whatever. And then you add money to the mix, so it just got crazy. And so I was just like, even though I liked it, I was like, this is getting scary and I don't
Not worth it.
know if this is worth it. And so there was another company. So I was, I had to like obligate parents so I could see where they worked, how much the money they made or whatever. And I'm going to be 100% candid here. I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but one of the parents was working at this company and I was just like, I couldn't believe how much money he was making. And I was like, I'm going to apply there. And I did. And I got a job. And I got a job there.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Dope.
Yes. So, and that was dealing with, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was dealing with government. It was dealing with individual like businesses, but also with the government too, because it was doing collections, but through collections, I learned how to read those contracts and what the obligations were. So more indirect foray into government contracts.
Right. Now I want to ask about that, but real quick, I'm gonna go back because I wanted to ask the 2 months that you was at the credit union. Why did you not like it? If it's only 2 months, I feel like that might not be the work. That might be the people. Was it like you didn't like working around the people, or was it the work?
Well, it was kind of like this is something else that a lot of people don't know. So what I did at the credit union was I worked in a department called over limits. So I work with credit cards. If you went over your credit card limit, it's not the same as being behind, but you can't be over the limit. And what people don't realize is that if you go over your limit, the disclosure statements that you sign for these banks and credit unions allow them to go into any account that has your social security number attached to it and take your money to bring you back under the limit. Wow. So that's what I used to do. And so people would call me and this is my child's college fund. It doesn't matter what the account is.
Right.
If you have an account with your child on it, whatever that, and it could be all your child's money. If your social security number is attached to it, they're going to take money out of that account. They'll bring it down to the $5 that you're required to have in your account to bring this account under the limit. It could be $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, or $50, but they're going to do it. You're going to look at any account that you have at that financial institution, and they're going to bring your account current.
All right, but because you were doing that, did that bother you or something?
It didn't bother me. I just didn't want to do that. I just felt like it was really transactional, and I just felt like I just had more. I had more that I could be doing somewhere else. And I tried, you know what I mean? But it didn't work out. They kind of shamed me and tried to make me feel bad about wanting to leave this job after only being there for a couple of months.
Okay. So disclosure statements, and now more recently some contracts and all this other stuff. And this is what I know. You are like a wealth of information, but I attach contracts in my mind to you primarily. So this is where we are today, right? Like you read contracts, you understand contracts, you interpret contracts on behalf of people and businesses and all this other stuff, right? So do you love this? Do you love the like what you do with these contracts?
I absolutely love it. And I was actually talking to somebody yesterday. I always thought I would be an attorney. When I was growing up, I thought I would be an attorney. I've always liked to read. I've always been pretty good at comprehending information. So I always thought I would be an attorney. So while I'm not an attorney, this is probably as close to doing legal work as I would ever get without being an attorney. Because everything I do is legal, like when I'm in source selections, the things that happen in the source selection, if somebody decides to dispute or have a protest or whatever, everything that we do, they can request to see that information of things that we did so you got to make sure your stuff is good. The same thing with your contracts, like you got to make sure everything is tight. So this is as close, to being an attorney or doing legal work as I possibly could be without being an actual attorney.
So for those of you not in the government that might not know what source selection is, let me just give you a quick understanding. So and I'll use an analogy. So let's say that you have you got your house, you own a house, and you need to get the bathroom done, and so you put some information out there and you say, hey, I have a bathroom, I need my bathroom done, I need the walls painted, I need the sink replaced, I need the toilet bowl replaced. Let's just say you put that on a website somewhere, and like 3 companies see that and they're like, hey, we want to do that. So they submit information to me saying, hey, we're the best bathroom people in town. We can do this. We can meet all of your requirements. Now, 3 companies submit that. Me and a team of people, maybe me and my wife, I'll maybe include the kids. We are a group of people that's going to evaluate the proposals that you've submitted to say you could do the bathroom. Company A, Company B, and Company C. If we pick Company A, Company B might be like, all right, fine, whatever, we lost that. But Company C might be like, yo, that's BS. We should have won that. We're going to protest that you picked Company A. And so when Company C protests that you pick Company A, that I pick Company A, they can say, let me see all of the ways that let me see what you did. Let me see how you came to the conclusion that you should pick A. And that's what Constance is talking about. That if a company, for instance, protests and say, yo, that's whack that y'all picked them, you should have picked us, we need to see what you got going on here. She's saying because she pays attention to detail, because she reads these contracts, because she documents everything that happens and has to keep her situation tight, she has to be able to respond to those folks when they do the protest. So that's what she was explaining there in that situation. Okay, so staying on the topic of contracts, I asked Constance to tell me more about, her thoughts on why you shouldn't just sign a contract as soon as you win the contract. Because, you could be a smaller business, get all excited that you just won all of this money, sign the contract, don't even pay attention to what the details are, and send it back, and you wash your hands of it. I think that's a reality that a lot of people go through, and I wanted Constance to talk about why that's not okay. It's clearly not okay, but I wanted Constance to tell us why it's not okay.
Yes. So first and foremost, every company, you have to protect yourself.
Right.
And part of protecting yourself is either you understanding what these terms and conditions mean or how they impact your company if something comes up. Because it doesn't matter if nothing comes up, right? But if something comes up, which things do,
Yep.
you got to understand how you'll be impacted if something goes wrong. So either knowing for yourself or having someone else that actually knows what these terms and conditions mean, how they'll impact you if something goes wrong, is very important. It's very exciting to think, oh my gosh, I just got my first $250,000 contract. But what are you going to do if you sign off on your contract and you've accepted payment terms that are like 90 to 120 days? Who can go as a small business for 90 or 120 days, especially if you have to pay other people who are actually doing the work? But the bottom line is with an agreement, whoever is issuing the agreement, they're issuing the agreement with terms and conditions that favor them. So they'll say, well, we don't have to worry about getting them paid, even though we've already received payment from the government. We don't have to worry about paying for 3 months out. We can stack our cash.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You know what I mean? And understanding that you can push back. Pushing back and going back and forth and negotiating, that is a part of contracts, period. Nothing to do with government contracts, but contracts, period. And you need to establish as your business, and it won't always be the same for each business, what is important to your business. Well, my business might not be able to go more than 20 days. So if you send me a contract that says you're going to pay me in 90 days, you're paying me net 90, well, I'm going to redline and strike through that and say, no, I need to be paid within 20 days or within 15 days of you receiving payment from the government. And these companies, like new businesses, because they haven't done this before, they're scared. They think, oh my God, I'm going to lose the business. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to push back. No, they are used to, especially if you're dealing with a large company, they understand that there's going to be pushback, and they understand if you know what you're doing, you should be pushing back. You should be saying, based on what you've established for your business, that this doesn't work for me. And in some instances, not all, but in some instances, you're going to have to make a decision whether you want to walk away or not. If the terms and conditions are they're going to put you in a place that's super risky for your business, then you probably shouldn't do business with them.
Yeah, that's the thing is to the point about getting all excited and being afraid to push back. I can honestly say, as a confident person, me, I've been in that situation before multiple times where I get presented with terms legally and then I have to now question, do I push back? Do I not? Because I'm like, I'm doing good work. You know the work that I'm doing. The government, because I support the government through the contractor. The government knows my work. They love the work. You present me with the same exact terms that I agreed to last year, and you just now want me to re-up again. It's like I don't want to lose it by saying you need to do better. You know what I mean? But at the same time, to your point, they make it in their favor. Like they have the upper hand, so they will make it in their favor. And if they come with you, if they come to you with an offer to sign a contract, and you come right back and say, "All right, two thumbs up," that's what they want you to do. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes,
Because they don't want you to push back. So it's
yeah,
super. It's a tough situation to remove the emotions from it, and push back and say, "Nah, you need to do this, this, and this." This is why I think you're valuable, because it's I was on LinkedIn yesterday talking about, we had like an audio room where we were talking about quitting, like when you quit. And there was a lot of people, when did you have a big quit at your job? And a lot of people were talking about how they pushed back early in their careers. And I remember, and I said out loud to, I was on stage and I said, yo, the thing about being early in your career and pushing back, or against, work on the weekends, against, not getting a raise this year, against that stuff, you don't even know that you can push back. It's great to have someone who's been in the industry for a long time, who knows that these companies will take advantage of you if you let them, all that other type of stuff. If you have that person, they can be the battery in your back and tell you this is what you need to go back to them and say. And to me, this is one of your many strengths, you know what I'm saying, is where you can put the battery in people's back to be like, no, look at this and look at this, change this, update this, and then send it back to them. That to me is so valuable, because on their own, the person's gonna be like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just wanna take this contract and move on. So I feel you. The emotional part is super important to me. I don't think you could just neglect the emotions. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a real thing. This is life changing money.
yeah,
I don't know. I'm
yeah.
I'm
And just to add to that too, while I'm thinking about it, if you win a contract for $500,000, you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the life of my business, right? But you
mhm.
sign up on the contract and you're not paying attention, and they pay you within 120 days. Your company can go out of business with no money in 120 days. So you got
Mhm.
the $500,000 contract, and it's so exciting. They're not doing anything wrong. It's not personal for them. It's business. It's business and doing things that are going to impact my business in a positive way while I'm doing business with you. And it may wind up being negative for you, but it's positive for me. So it's
Right.
not personal for them, and it's not emotional for large businesses or for businesses, period. They are doing what is in their best interest.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
And
what you guys have to keep in mind.
yeah, and you have to also do what's in the best interest of your business.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So another thing that you also mentioned that I like is thinking big, right? So if you if you're a small business and you're growing and you sign these contracts or whatever, pardon me, it's very easy to downplay your value and say, hey, well, I'm just a small business, I'm a small fish, they're big fish, they can run things. But you always talk about being a small business but thinking big. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think I know that's one of your messages that's definitely resonated with me, and it stays in the back of my head all the time. So, what do you mean when you say, "Yo, you're a small business, but you need to think like a big business"? Talk
Yeah,
about that.
I keep using them, but the Lockheed Martins of the world, the General Dynamics of the world, BAE Systems, CACI, these large organizations, they didn't start out as large organizations. They started out maybe as a one-man shop, like a lot of
Hmm.
companies do. But in order to get where they are, they've, and maybe at the initial, when the initial start of their company happened, they may not have been thinking that. But because you have people like me who can talk to you and tell you where you need to be thinking about where you want to see your business a year from now, 5 years from now, or whatever. But you need to come across, even though you're small, because small businesses, I'm sorry, but they will use excuses for things that they don't do that they should be doing with their business. And there's no excuse. If you want to be a business person, then you need to be a business person, whether you're Lockheed Martin or you're, a small domino company, whatever it is, you have to think like them. You need to have your own agreements, invest in your business so you can get somebody to draw up agreements for you. You need to learn about terms and conditions and decide which ones are important to your individual business. That might not be the same for everybody else's business. Lockheed Martin's terms and conditions are based on the fact that they're a behemoth, business or whatever. And they got people sitting on what we call the bench. If they're not working on a contract, they can afford to pay those people because they're such a large business. That's not going to be the same for a small business. So that's just one example. Another thing I wanted to mention before, if I can just go back for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
In these contracts, so the government contracts have a clause, a termination clause. They can terminate for convenience for any reason. They don't even have to give you a reason. Sometimes it's funding. The government doesn't want to terminate you. If they have a contract and they say this contract is going to be for a year, they don't want to terminate you less than a year because they have to explain why due diligence wasn't done and why this contract is being terminated. But what businesses do when they issue like teaming agreements to companies, they put that clause in there that they can terminate you for convenience. And that's something that companies don't know that they can push back on. You don't get to terminate me for your convenience because you find somebody else that's cheaper, or you decide that somebody doesn't like me or something like that. You get to terminate me if the government terminates you. And that's the only reason. And they don't know that you can put this in your agreement. So understanding how to, like I said, interpret the terms and conditions, or having someone, if you got to just pay someone for a couple of hours, if you barter with them, maybe you do some business that can help them. They got business that can help you. You barter to learn about the terms and conditions. But one of the things you need to do as a small business, and to be thinking like a large business, is understanding how this particular business government contracts work. You can't expect for the government to hold your hand, for the contracting officer, for contracting officers' representatives, like to babysit you. You need to jump in like you're Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin knows how to manage contracts. They know how to invoice so that they can get paid. They know everything that it is that they need to do. And they do have a group of people who are doing this. But if you don't have that group of people, you either need to, as I said, get someone or learn these things on your own. But you need to think like them because you want to, I assume, grow your business and be like them one day. You need to think like them out the gate, day one.
Yeah, I remember when you first told me about that clause that you can push back on that clause.
Yeah.
When you first told me that was a little surprising to me because I thought that every contract just has that in there by default and you just have to eat that. I did not know that you could push back on that and actually get that removed or even change the language. I didn't know that. So again, the point that I want to stress here is that you are a valuable resource that folks can reach to when it comes to these contracts and a bunch of other things in the government contracting space. Because if, like, I can be one of your clients, I can look to you to help me because I'm literally a government contracting. I'm in the government contracting space. I have a small business and I'm trying to grow the business. And I reach to you for a bunch of information, but you've been super helpful as far as when it came to these contracts and other things too. So I want people to know that. That's the point I want to drive home here. And to that point, where can someone go if they want to find out more about you and get more information or even get help? Where would they go? It's a good link.
So they can reach me I'm on Instagram, GovConsme. I'm on X, also known as Twitter, as GovConsme. I'm also at cjackson at jcs-llc.com and on LinkedIn.
Cool. Yep. Okay, all right, good deal. So yeah, all those links will be in the show notes. So if you're driving right now, whatever you're doing, don't worry, it'll be in the show notes. Constance, before we go, do you have any last did we miss anything? We got anything else here before we get out of here? Because
No,
I pro
I think the only thing that I want to say, because so I really started talking publicly about government contracts during the pandemic. It happened through Clubhouse, and all
Mhm.
of these people are saying, get into government contracts, get into government contracts. Absolutely 100%, you can get into government contracts. The government is the largest consumer in the entire world. They buy
Mhm.
everything: dog food, toilet paper, weapons, etc. But this can also be a business when you don't know that the government is not out to get you or to ruin your life, but they will take legal action against you if you do something that goes against the terms and conditions of your contract. I mean, it
Right.
happens just like it does out in, the regular contract world. So
Mhm.
you do yourself and the government a disservice when you jump into this business because you heard somebody say you can make a lot of money and you don't learn about the business first. So that is one of the things that I really, really push for new businesses, for small businesses that are trying to get into government contracts. I love government contracts. It's a wonderful space to be in, but learn as much as you can before you try to sell to the government.
All right, good deal. I love it.
Yeah.
Constance, thank you so much. This is a good opportunity to get to know you even more than I already do. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. And for everybody listening, again, the links will be in the show notes if you want to connect with Constance. And thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.